Hello everyone, thank you for attending this webinar. My name is Steve Hanna. I work for Codename One, and we work to make mobile development easier, especially if you're looking to develop for multiple platforms with one code base. So Codename One is a framework for Java developers to build native apps for all mobile devices. We're focused mainly right now on Android and iOS, but you can build desktop apps with this thing. You can build Windows Phone apps. I've just recently created a JavaScript port, so you can also build JavaScript apps. The best part is it's free and open source, so you can hack on the code if you really want to make things even better for yourself. Now let's look at a couple demos of some existing Codename One applications. So rather than do things live here, I prepared a couple videos of some real applications running. The first one I'm going to show is one of the first demos that we ever created. It's the kitchen sink demo, just to show off some of the cool animation features and layout features and the effects that you get built into the Codename One library. So you'll recognize a lot of these layouts from Swing and actually JavaFX and a lot of client libraries. And notice how smoothly it can change between them. The animations are done easily. You don't have to spit blood like you do in Swing to get animations like that. All kinds of neat effects for transitioning between different layouts on forms. And just look at a few of these transitions. And you can get these transitions fairly easily with just a few lines of code. You can even look at the code for this kitchen sink. It's in the Codename One demos. So if you actually need to do any of these transitions, literally you could copy and paste 3 lines of code, and you've got a very, very slick looking application. Next thing I want to show is we've got 2 devices running side by side. I prepared this. On the left you see my Nexus 5. On the right you see my iPad Air 2. And the Nexus 5 was recorded using barbecue screen, I think, so it's a little choppy. Doesn't give full justice to how smooth the application actually runs. And on the right side I think I used Air Server, which seems pretty smooth. So this is running the same application. It's the Dr. Sabetso demo. That's also available in the sources. It's got a simple AI. It's not really that smart, but it's a good demonstration of using the camera API. So let's watch it running side by side on the iPad and on Android. So you can see it looks native in both cases. We can access the camera. This is the first part. It's just taking a photo, and once the photo is taken, you'll see it gets nicely resized and turned into a circle image mask. And this is just an example of some of the image I/O features that are built into all the major platforms. And the way this works is you just ask Dr. Sabetso a question. You can't hear it here, but it's tied into the text-to-speech functionality. You can hear him talking. Okay, the next one I'm going to show is an app called Conscious Consumers. This is an app for finding and supporting local businesses that are doing good stuff. It's based in New Zealand. It uses the location APIs to be able to locate businesses close to you, like coffee shops or restaurants that are doing things that you like, and you can add them to your favorites, and you can find specials and whatnot. So when you first open the app, here's a good example of using the tab component in a slick way to scroll left. It's got the map component also. You can see that that's Google Maps. It goes around very easily. You can't actually see from this demo, but they've done something clever in that if they're online, it uses the Google Maps, which comes straight from the Google Maps server. But if the connection is slower, they're offline, it actually uses the OpenStreetMaps Tiles API. The reason being, it looks like, because the Tiles API caches. So even if you're offline, if you've used the general area before, you can still access all the maps functionality, which I thought it was pretty clever of it. You can see the hamburger menu. This is a standard menu that you can get in Codename One. It slides out from the left. More use of the tab component to navigate sliding easily right and left. to the content. Okay, the next one I'm going to show here is a clever little app called Why Homework. It's to help kids and I guess adults do their homework. And I like the way that they customize the look and feel of this application. So it's their own button, their own everything. And they also created a slick little tutorial that this is just an animation. It's not me going through. It's a tutorial to show people how to use the program. It doesn't get much easier than that. And Geeks at Work shows all the work and then graphs the slope. This, if I had this when I was learning this stuff, I definitely would have used it. And the last one we're going to look at is a social networking app called Travel Together that helps travelers share information about places that they visited. It's targeted at the Hebrew user. You can see there's a lot of Hebrew here that I don't really understand. Actually, I don't understand at all. But it's a good example of the localization features of Codename One, as it can seamlessly work in all languages at the same time. That was one of the earliest considerations, it looks like, in the design and architecture of the framework. So you can see it's very much like the Facebook app. You can scroll through and just see these pictures that people have posted. One cool thing you notice when you scroll down, this nice little translucent overlay comes out the bottom. It makes a very nice transition. And I wasn't able to do a lot because I'm not actually in the communities. It also uses the hamburger menu on the left, sliding out to select between things. You can navigate different cities. There's a grid layout on the left there. So you can see that it's a relatively complex nested hierarchy of components here. And this is a real-world application, just like the Conscious Consumers one. They're on the various app stores you can download and use right now. So now that we've looked at a few of the applications to see what you can do, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the toolkit. So the Codename One Tool Kit consists of, well, of course, a Java API to interact with all the necessary features you need on a device, like locations, contacts, camera, media, all these things that you expect, and the basic Java APIs that you're used to. It's got a GUI designer that allows you to drag and drop, lay out your forms, set up styles, import pictures, and manage them all in a centralized resource file. It's got a simulator that works from NetBeans and Eclipse or IntelliJ, so that you can test your app out without having to jump through a whole lot of hoops very smoothly and quickly. Once you've built your app and you've tested it out in the simulator, then what you do is you send it to the build server. And the build server is in the cloud. And we've got servers for Windows, Windows Phone, iOS, BlackBerry, builds for JavaScript, Android, and in many cases you actually need a special machine in the build server. Like for the iOS, we have a Macs up there because you need a Mac to do the building. But the good thing is you don't need a Mac anymore to do iOS development. You just send it to the build server, and there's build hints, and just your app seamlessly comes out as an iOS app to download. I've already talked about some of the features, and we've seen some of the features, but some nice features I'll mention quickly. Now the simulator is quite fast compared, especially to the Android simulator. Being able to do debugging directly inside your IDE, just standard Java debugging, is very nice. Drag and drop development, the GUI tool. For images, because apps built with Codename One are meant to run on all kinds of different devices with different resolutions and different form factors, it'll allows you to seamlessly manage images with multiple DPIs, and it'll select the image with the most appropriate DPI. These are called multi-images. I'm not going to spend too much time on this right now, but you can read up on it. Another nice thing is it hides the differences between versions of Android. Even if you were just targeting Android, there's a lot of pitfalls that you can face. I saw this post on Twitter the other day, and I thought it was a little bit funny because it's true. Android is so fragmented that when you're writing code, you have no idea whether it's going to work. Codename One does a lot to help this too. You code to the Codename One API, and then you're shielded from all of these little slight differences, not only between iOS and Android, but also between the different versions of Android, and it'll just work. Now the API right now, we've got Java 8 features like Lambda and try with. Not the full API, but the subset is trimmed down to make for very slim executables. Like you've got most of your Java lang, a lot of Java I/O, and it's also got extra APIs for accessing location, camera, contacts, and all of this is in the Java docs. It's quite rich, everything you generally need to do in a mobile application. Now the UI is very similar to Swing. So it's a lightweight, pluggable user interface. So as you saw in the demo applications, you can have lots of different looking user interfaces. And you can make the user interface look different across APIs. The API usage is similar to Swing in that there's classes to create a form, and then there's a component hierarchy. We'll get into that in the demo. And there's also a lot of third-party libraries. There's social integration, there's charts APIs, ads, maps. It's got database APIs, PubNub, and it's a growing user community that is really helping to contribute a lot to the platform. Okay, now the next portion of this webinar, we will be building a social networking app. Okay, so for the tutorial today, we're going to build a social networking application that's very similar to the Facebook and also the Travel Together app. Just the idea is you've got some friends, you can invite friends to be your friend, you can accept friend requests, you can see the news items that your friends post, and you can post items yourself. So let's take a look at what that app looks like right now. I've got the finished product here. So this is inside NetBeans. And we're going to run it in the simulator. So NetBeans has a Codename One option on the side there, but underneath that you can just use the standard run, and this is going to run the application inside the Codename One simulator. It's firing it up for the first time in a while, so it's taking a little bit longer than usual. Subsequent firing ups should work a little bit smoother. So let's right now it's showing me in the Android skin here, but they'll all look pretty similar. Okay, so the app here allows me to register. I've already registered under name Steve P. Login. Okay, so it takes me to my my feed, and it shows me. I'm going to make it so you can see this a little bit better. There we go. So here's my news feed. I've got the hamburger menu on the left to see different parts, so I can see my profile. Oh, next out of bounds, coordinates out of bounds. That's interesting. Okay. My news feed, my friends, and it's got an option to invite friends, so I can do a search and it'll load up all the friends. Now I'm already friends with this guy, and then I can log out. Now with go back to the news feed here and show the add post, some new post, and on the actual device the attach photo option will open up the camera, but on this device it's just going to open up a file dialog so you can select an image. I'm not sure if I have any. Not sure what that is an image of. Looks like some sort of mess. I can click submit and go back to news, and this is my new post. It is now displayed. So it's a fairly simple app, but we are going to make this app inside of 30 minutes. So not a moment to lose. We'll start out by going to File, New Project, and under Codename One, if you have the Codename One library installed, there will be a Codename One project option. The Codename One library option is if you're doing a shared library. The project is for an application. social network live, we'll call it, and I'm going to do it inside the webinar folder. So you need to select a package name, and the package name will ultimately be used as the app ID in the iOS store, and it may be used for things for Android too. So it's important to choose something that you may not want to change later. It's also where the main lifecycle class will be located. And we'll social network. And the class name, we'll call it just social network. We can choose a theme. I'm going to use the business theme, but there's all kinds of different themes. You can see a preview. So with a lot of these themes, it's going to look the same on all the devices, which I find easier. I like it to look the same. But if you went for native theme, it'll actually look different on different devices. Android will look like Android forms and dialogues and widgets. iOS will look like iOS. But I'm just going to stick with business so that it's a consistent look on all devices. For the template, I'm going to use Hello World Manual. Okay, so here's my application, and as soon as it's created, I'm going to run it just to show what we start out with. This is the Hello World template, so it's just a single form that says Hi World on it. So we're going to ultimately change that, but let's take a look at the actual file. So the social network main class that's generated, if you've done applet programming before or servlet, it's very similar. It's got a life cycle. The init method is called when the app is first fired up. The start is called whenever it comes into the foreground, stop when it goes into the background, and destroy when the app is terminated. So things that only have to happen once, you want to throw inside your init method. Things that you want to happen whenever the app is opened, you want to put inside the start method. So right here you can see it's creating a form. It's adding a label to the form, and it's showing the form. The structure and the programming code is very similar to Swing. The form is analogous to the JFrame label to JLabel, and then the show method actually shows the form. I find it a very simple API to use because if you want to just make a form show up front, form show will show. It'll work with transitions, so that is now the main form on the screen. It's a lot simpler programming model than for desktop when you got to worry about a whole bunch of windows flying around. With mobile, there's only one window there at a time, and that's what this API is designed to show. Okay, so to start with, what I usually do is I figure out what screens I need in the app. I've actually drawn a workflow if it gets too difficult, and I just create methods to show each of those screens. So I've got my little cooking show set up. So for the start, that's where we were. Now for step one, and actually one thing I'm going to do, well, not yet. So for step one, I'm going to implement all of my methods here. Okay, so social network. Okay, and what I've done here is I put in placeholders. I've got show login form, show register form, show profile. This will show the profile for the currently logged in user. I haven't actually implemented this, but show the profile of a particular user. Then we need a form to add posts. We need a form to show the feed. We need a form to show the post for a particular user. I'm not using that yet. We need a form to show the friends, the friend requests, and a few other forms there. Now, a lot of the functionality of this app is in a server app that is I created in one day. It's just a simple PHP application with a MySQL database, and that's all on GitHub. I'll provide the links. And in order to interface with this, I created a client class. We're not going to create here, so we'll just copy it. So it's called social client, and copy it from my other project, and I'm going to paste it into my new project. So we can take a look. Oh, social client, why is this objecting to so much here? Display. Oh, lambda expression. Did I forget to? I forgot a very important step at the beginning of my application, and that was to select Java 8. Rather than go through and change things, I'm just going to start a new project. So there's a checkbox for Java 8. I want to use lambdas. And social network, da-da-da. That looks good. Okay, and we'll just copy our files in from the old project. Okay, so now we've got social net. This was just to be consistent with my original work. Okay, now we're where we left off, and I want to look at the social client here. This is, we don't need to do anything with this. I wrote it. It's just a simple REST client. It makes use of the Codename One IO classes for particularly connection requests, network manager, and JSON parsing to most of the sending of the actual request is contained inside one method. So you can see how easily you can build a web service client. This is capable of getting images and binary data, can send multi-part requests as necessary. So you can peruse this. It's got higher level methods for each of the particular functions you need to perform. Log in, log out, get friends, find users, etc. And we're going to use that from our main UI class as necessary. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to show the login form. So I'm just going to copy and paste my progress here. So this is the show login form method. Now notice inside the start method I have replaced the creation of the hello world form with my show login form method. And then the show login form method itself looks like this. Now, since this is our first form and we're just getting familiar with the API, I'm going to go through this step by step. So we create our form. We saw that in the hello world form. Just creating a new form. The login will give it the heading login. I can specify, well, I'm going to make a wrapper container inside the form so that it's easier for me to set padding. So I'm going to create a style and set the padding of the container. It's very similar to using CSS, but I just want to specify the padding. It's using dips for the unit. Dips are a little bit more platform neutral. That should work on higher resolution devices more consistently than if you used pixels. So the form itself is going to use a box layout. Now a box layout allows us to lay things out vertically. So when I add the next component as label, it goes at the top of the form. I'm creating a username field and a password field, and I'm adding those to the form, and it just adds them one after another vertically along the form. The login button itself is going to have an action listener, and notice I'm using lambdas here to respond to the action. And I call the login method of the client. It's going to throw an exception if there's a problem, and I'm just going to show an error. If it's exceeded, then it's just going to continue through. What I'm going to do after the user logs in is I check using the client get friends. This hits the server and gets a list of all the friends. And it's right now I'm not doing a lot of class hierarchies. just to save time. Everything's a map and a list right now. It works out very nicely with JSON. Later on, I might lock it down and actually use some class hierarchies. We can see some of the tools for making that easy on a web service. But first I'm going to check, and if they have no friends, I'm going to send them to the send friend request form so that they can invite friends. And if they do have some friends, I'm just going to show them their newsfeed. And if there's any problems along the way, then we'll just show a dialog saying that there was a problem. One thing I'm going to note is we're using the client object here. I can go into the social client. This is actually live. I've installed the server on the PHP application on one of my servers here, so you could actually use this directly. If you wanted to install the server locally, you could change this URL just to a local host wherever you've got the server software installed. So it's fairly portable. If you wanted to build a social networking app on top of this, you could, but this is demo grade. I haven't really put a lot of thought into security and whatnot. So use at your own risk and discretion. Okay, last is we're going to add a register button to the form. So when you click on register, it will take you to the register form. Add these components to the layout, and at the end we show the form. So let's take a look at what we've got so far. Run this app in the simulator, and it should take us to our login form. There we go, and I should be able to go to Steve, put in my password since I've already logged in. And once I'm logged in, nothing happens because both of those methods that it goes to don't do anything. But how about register? Also doesn't do anything. But anyways, we've got our login form. That's all we need so far. The next step is we're going to implement the show registration form. So let's take a look at that. So when we click on the register button, we want the show registration form to be shown. And a lot of it is the same. It's exactly the same as the login form, so you can pretty much copy and paste this. The only difference is it's got two password fields, one to verify, and then when you click the register button, it calls the register method in the client. If that succeeds, it actually logs in with the same credentials just to save the step. Then it does the exact same thing the login form does. Checks to see if there's friends, shows them to the send request form if there's not, show feed if there is. One thing, I've implemented a nice utility method called show error that just wraps dialog show just in case, like in cases like this, I catch the exceptions and I just want to show a dialog with the error message. Just quick and dirty for now. So when we click on register, it should take us now to the registration form. Let's run it again. Now we'll click on register, and there we go. There's our registration form. So let's register as Jack, password P, and we'll go register. So if all worked well, nothing should happen. And that's because both of the things that we told it to go to after register, it didn't do. However, the cancel button does work. Just go into that. The cancel button, just so you can see the action on that, I am just sending back to the current form. But whichever, now you'll know this is a nice trick when you want to do navigation. You can use the display class to always get the current form. And we'll put that in a final variable so that we can use that for any of the back commands inside our lambdas. So the current form at this point, because we haven't actually displayed the register form yet, would be the login form. And so inside our cancel button, we call show back. And that will return to the current form, which was the login form, which is a fairly useful trick to hang on to. Okay, the next step, we are going to implement the show send friend request form, and we're also going to add our hamburger menu. So I'll paste in the next step. So for the show send friend request, let's see. So here's our code for the show send friend request form. If you remember, it had a search box at the top, that's to search users, and it had a list in the main part. Now for the list, we're using a multi-list. Now if you're not familiar with lists, lists were a core part of Swing, and they're also a core part of Codename One. They're very efficient to show long lists of data because they don't actually have to build a separate UI component for each element in the list. It works more like a stamp. You've got sort of a template of how each row in the list should look, and it takes the data from the model and it just stamps it down for each one. So you could have a million or a billion items, if the model will support it, and it doesn't hog memory and it doesn't kill performance. So if you've got a lot of items, a list is very efficient. The multi-list in particular is a useful component in Codename One that expects its model to have maps, and it looks for specific keys. For instance, line 1 is the main label that'll show for each line. It's also got line 2, line 3, line 4 that'll show maybe a little bit of description text underneath it. It looks for things like icon, and you can have checkboxes also. So it's just got a lot of utilities to get you going if you wanted to make a list that's more than just a list of strings. So we're going to use that, set it to a default list model for now. We'll populate the list in a moment. And then we just add our components. We're using the border layout. The search field goes in the north. The list goes in the center. So what we haven't done is we haven't actually implemented any of the functionality that allows the search field to do the searching, and we also haven't done anything with the list data. Presumably, well, the way we want it to work is when the user enters text in, as they enter the text, it's filling in the search results in the list. And when they click on a friend or a user that they want to become friends with, it should give them an option to send a friend request. So for the next step, we're going to implement the data change listener on the search field. Oh, one thing I wanted to go over here that I kind of glossed over. One thing we've added, I made a utility method to add the hamburger menu. So I created this add menu function on the that takes a form as a parameter. So this shows you how you can add actions to each form in the form of commands. It's a very flexible API. By default, commands will show up in the in the appropriate places. I think Android has a little menu in the top right. On iOS, they show up as sort of buttons along the top bar. But in this application, we are going to set the command behavior to side navigation. So inside our init method, you can see this use of display, get instance, set command behavior. This is a useful way to specify how we want our commands to be rendered in this app. Then when we're installing commands onto a form like we are in add menu here, now each command is just added. I'm extending the command class. It's got a label. You could have icons also. It's quite rich. And you override the action performed. And this is where we show profile, show feed. It just allows us to navigate around to all those show methods that we created. Now I want to get back to where I was, which was our search field. Let's make our search field on the send friend request form able to respond. So we're going to add a data change listener, and this gets fired every time there's a change in the text in the search field. If the length, we're only going to do it if the length of the text is greater than 2. And notice we're using lambdas here. Instead of new data change listener, we're just putting a lambda in here. It's just much neater. So we start out by calling the find users method on the client. It gets the text from the search field, and it gets the results as a list of maps. And we're going to loop through the results. And since they're already maps and our multi-list expects maps in its model, we're just going to keep the exact same map that we got in from the web service, except we're going to add keys that the multi-list is expecting, like line 1, line 2, line 3. For instance, line 1, we want the label to be the screen name of the user. Line 2, we want the label to be the username, so that's sort of a smaller description. Line 3 is going to indicate whether they're friends, whether the user is a friend or not. And we're also, if the user has specified a custom avatar, we're actually going to put in an avatar picture. Now, this is a good spot to talk about these placeholder images. The way we're going to work with images here, because the web service is returning a URL, like the avatar entry for a user that is found is just going to be an HTTP URL. And so we're going to use the URL image class. And so you can see here, URL image has a create to storage method. It also has a create to file system method. And this allows us to fairly seamlessly incorporate images that are specified somewhere, that are located somewhere else on the internet in our forms. So all we need to do is we need to have an existing encoded image that is a placeholder for the image, so it knows how big. It needs to reserve the space for the image because it's going to show that placeholder until the image is finished downloading. We specify where it's going to be cached in storage, a key. I just use the same URL, and then because this is going to be a small image, I just add a little indicator saying it's small. The URL itself, and then there's an adapter that you can use to do something with the image. You can resize it, you can crop it. We're going to use resize scale to fill because that's going to keep the dimensions and it's going to fill the space of the default avatar. Now the default avatar I have defined in the init method. Because there's three particular images that we need in our application, I'm generating them all inside the init method. Now first of all, I'm getting an image that I've uploaded from the theme, and that image actually isn't there yet. So I need to add it. The first thing, now I haven't even used this at all yet, but one nice thing about Codename One is it comes with a resource file format that can embed all your images with multi-resolutions in one file and all of your styles. So if I double click on this theme.res in the default package, it's going to open up the resource editor app. And this has different themes, a GUI builder so you can lay out, drag and drop your GUIs. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to import an image. So I'm going to go add images, and I need to have the default image, put it in my assets here. So I've got this little image that I'm just going to use for the default avatar. When the user doesn't have their own, we're going to use this image. So I'm going to upload this, and it's avatar default 512 PNG, and I'm going to reference it from the code with theme which was loaded at the very beginning. And it's got a get image method that allows me to get that image. Now one thing I got to make sure is I got to save this now that it's saved the resource file. Okay, so I'm going to get that image, and I'm going to generate large avatars and small avatars. Now I could have used multi-images, and then this would all be handled for me, but I'm going to do it a bit more hands-on here, so it's more code, less magic. So I'm going to figure out the display width and height and figure out a good size for the large avatar based on a percentage of the device width and height. And I am going to create a scaled version of the avatar image that I got, which was 512 pixels, and I'm going to call that the default avatar large. I'm going to do a similar thing with the small, but it's just going to be a smaller image. And for the news posts that's going to come later, I need a full-size image. And for that, I'm actually just going to create a blank image to be my placeholder, and I'm going to make it roughly the full width of the lesser of the width and height of the device. So that all you need to know here is in the init method I am setting up some placeholder images that I'm going to use for my URL images later on. So let's go down and look at how I'm using that when I'm laying out the invite friends method. So here's the URL image, and there I'm using my avatar small as the placeholder image, and I'm going to put it inside the icon key of the map, and the multi-list knows to use this as the icon on the left side. It's got some parameters to put it on the right side or change the location of the icon, but by default it goes on the left. And then I create a new list model with my results, and I set that in the list, so it's going to update the list. So I should be able to run this now, and it'll be a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to log in as Steve. Okay, I must not have, I think I need to actually implement something else. So what is it doing? Oh, it's asking to go to show feed because I already have, so after login, and I haven't implemented show feed yet. Okay, so let's actually not test the app out just yet then. We'll wait till I've implemented show feed. That's a couple steps down the road. So in the send friend requests, I want to implement the, actually let's do this. The action listener for the list. Because when the user clicks on a friend or a person that they find, they need to be able to send a friend request. And I hadn't implemented that yet. So here for the list, I've added an action listener now for the list. First thing it gets is it gets the selected item from the list, and this is from the model. So in our case, the model is a list of maps, and so the map is actually the one, the item that the user clicked on. And it checks to see if the user is a friend or has a pending friend invite, and in those cases it doesn't do anything. But in the case that it's not a friend yet, then we get the screen name, we create a dialog, ask them if they want to send a friend request. We've got an infinite progress dialog, which is a useful thing for showing the progress, showing one of those infinite indicators while it's sending a network request. And then we send the friend request using our REST API. And if everything worked, if it gets to this point, that means it worked. It's going to throw an exception if it didn't. And that's basically that. So the next step is the show friend requests. So for the friend that's received a friend request, let's show friend requests. He needs to be able to see who has sent the request and accept those requests. So similar format, we create the form, we add the menu just like with the side menu, just like with all the others. We're going to use a multi-list again for all the items. So we've got line 1, line 2, line 3. Line 1 is going to be the screen name, line 2 is the username, and then line 3 it'll just say click to accept. So if you click on this, presumably it should pop up with something. And that's where we get to the action listener on this form, which if you click, it'll get the selected item and it'll call the accept friend request on the API. And if all has worked, then you two should be friends. We're almost ready to demo the app again. Now we're going to implement show feed, which will allow us to log in with Steve at least, because he's already got friends. So our show feed method is a little bit more complex because the feed has to show the actual posts that users have made. But it's the same idea. It's a nested hierarchy of layout of containers. We've got, I'm going to do a border layout, and at the top is where we're going to put the buttons for adding posts. So I'm going to add a button for adding posts, and clicking on that is just going to show the add post form. Then for the list of posts, I'm not going to use a multi-list this time. Now, I talked about the benefits of a multi-list or a list in general, and that's that it's very efficient. It works like a stamp, that every element looks almost the same. But with our posts, the elements might look different, and they might take up different amounts of space depending on how much content the user has put in. So we're actually just going to use a regular container with a box layout. And this has a few other advantages for doing infinite scrolling and things like that later on that we're not going to implement yet. But we are going to get the feed from the client API, loop through every element in the feed, and we're going to create a container and add it to the form. And the container itself is going to have all the layouts. I'll let you go through. Most of this stuff is very similar to things that we've already demonstrated here. using the URL image. So we'll skip that, and we're just going to run our demo at this point. Okay, so we'll log in, Steve, password P, and now I'm taken to my feed, just like at the beginning. And I'm going to zoom to 50% here so you can all see it. So that's the feed that I had before. I don't think we've implemented add post yet, so that doesn't do anything. The profile we have not implemented yet, so that doesn't do anything. But do we have any pending friend requests? No. But we can go in and invite friends. This we have implemented. And let's look for Jack. Okay, so there's Jack Bauer that we had before, and then there's just Jack. This is the user we created earlier on. So I can click on this, and it's going to pop up with this dialog. We just wrote this now. Send a friend request to Jack. Yes, send. And I get the message saying it was successfully sent. So if I log out, and I log in as Jack, I can go to pending requests, and there we go. There's the request from me, and I'm going to click to accept it, and yes. Okay, so that all works. So now if I go to the feed, I can now see all the posts that Steve Hanna has made. So just like a Facebook app, just a social networking app, fairly easy. Now this app is begging to have some refinements made, like post or push technology, so that when you get the friend request, it pops up. We're not going to do that in the tutorial today, but we will do that in a later segment. It's not hard to do with Codename One. Okay, the next step is we're going to implement that show add post form. Show add post form. So this is a form that has a comment box and a button to capture an image. So we haven't looked at the capture photo API yet. The rest of this is all familiar to this point. We're adding components to a form. For the inside the action listener for the photo button, we call capture photo. This is part of the API. And I'm going to specify that I want it to be 1024 pixels width. I could choose anything, but I'm just going to try to limit that. Now, if the user selects a photo and actually takes a picture, we're going to get a file path back on the local file system. If not, we're going to get null. If they hit cancel, we'll just return and not continue. Now, for the actual button for the image, we want to scale the image to fit inside 256 by 256. And we're going to set the icon on the photo button to the scaled version of that image. And what we haven't implemented here, it looks like, is the ability to save the photo. We will do that at a future step, unless I forgot. Oh, no, we do that at the submit. So we're not actually saving it yet. Oh, and that explains another thing, why the resolution is so low. Implementation details. Okay, so that it just sets the icon on the button, and then we go on. Now the submit button takes the comment, and it takes the photos, the icon from the photo button, and it just posts them to the REST API. And then we go back. So if anything failed, it's going to show an error. And so we're hiding some of the details here, but more or less, you could write this code yourself, and that's pushing it to the server. This is one thing that I see that I probably should have tackled. Notice that we take the picture in 1024 width, and then we scale it down to 256, and then we try to send that image to the server. So it kills resolution, but oh well. Like I said, demo grade, lots of things we can improve on. And then the cancel button just shows back. Okay, we're not going to show that in action until we've completed another couple steps. Let's just implement the show friends form for completion. And this doesn't do much different. It just calls the get friends API. We don't need that. And it's very similar to the invite friends form. We just got to do it for completion. And the show profile, which is a little bit more interesting. Let's look at the show profile method. Oops. Oh. Did I not? Looks like I didn't implement show profile there. I've got step 10 here. Okay, well let's get the show profile from a more complete one. You can see there's a lot of juice here. Okay, social network. And we'll replace our empty ones with some full ones. And let's just walk through and see what's going on here. We've got two methods, show profile and show profile that takes a username. And we're just going to say that the profile that's no arg just uses our currently logged in username. Once we've got the profile, it's just a map. We're going to use the screen name to be the title of the form, add the menu. All this stuff is pretty much the same as what we had prior. We've got the avatar. We're placing the avatar in a button. It's a lot like the URL image. It's a lot like the adding a post where we're using the capture API in the button. So we've got an action listener for the avatar button that when you click on it, it's going to capture a photo, and it's going to set that photo to the avatar, or to the actual icon of the button, and that's going to update right away. But it's also going to, when it's all done, update the client profile using the REST API, passing the encoded image back to the server. So this is doing a fair bit. I'm not going to go into great detail because it's similar to other details that we've gone over in other forms. A similar thing with the screen name adding action listener. The screen name is where the user has an option to edit their screen name. When you click on the button, it creates a text field and it replaces the button with that text field. User types it in. When they're done, it updates the profile using the REST API. And I believe that is our functional app. Yay. So, one thing. Let's run this in the simulator, just make sure it works. Okay, so log in with Steve P. I'll go profile. So here's, okay, there's that index out of bounds. I'm not sure what's going on. So if I want to choose a different image, I can, I should have had something. Here, how's this one? It's a picture of me and my wife in Mexico. And that's updated on the server. So now if I go to news, all of my news items will have that that image for my avatar. I can add posts, but we've seen all this before. So that's our relatively functional app. So what do we want to do once we've built our app and it works in the simulator? And you can see I do have an error here, but let's see, good subimage scale fill. But I believe that is already fixed on the server. So what we're going to do is build it for an Android device. Oops, where's that one? Network Live 2. So I haven't gone into this yet, but we're going to use the build server. We'll go into properties, and this is where we get all the neat properties, because for each each platform will have its own special stuff that you have to worry about. iOS, for example, you need certificates that you get from the App Store. You actually have to have an Apple developer ID. And we do provide a certificate wizard that'll generate those certificates for you, which makes it a lot easier. Android, you can generate your own. So I'm going to do it here. And so I've got a key store that I've generated. I've got a password and my alias, and that's all the information I need for Android. Now let's send this to the server. So I'm going to send the Android build, and you can see the progress here at the bottom. Android build. Oh, username, password incorrect. Oh, I need to log in. Good thing I haven't used this computer in a while. So let's log in. So this is again inside properties. This you only have to do once, which is why I totally forgot about it. Okay, now I should be logged in and send Android build. Oh. And it's sometimes if there's a new update, it'll download client libraries. Apparently my libraries were a little out of date, but that's what the downloaded is. That happens seamlessly in the background, and when it's all done, I get this nice URL to the build server. It's always the same URL. You just go to codename1.com, and you can see the progress of all your builds. Log in again. Let's see what the progress is here. My phone's going crazy here. Okay. So it's actually done. So this was my social network build. I get this QR code so you can actually install it. I can send an email link to myself, which I often like to do because I can open that right on my phone, or I can download the APK right here. And I'll post the finished application so that you can all use it yourselves also. And if you want, you can build your own social network on this. So as you might have noticed, this recording is not from the actual webinar. There were technical difficulties in the webinar, and so instead of actually trying to just publish that, I decided to spend the extra hour and just record it again with ScreenFlow. So I encourage you to send your questions anytime to my email address. You can also, let me just, steve@weblight.ca. You can also hashtag Codename One, shenna78, or those are your useful links. I thank you so much for tuning in to this webinar, and we're going to be doing more webinars in the future. Hopefully we'll have all of the glitches ironed out by then. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.